Lazarvikovich, that guy's awesome, Lazarvikovich, he's a Theo, alright, Lazarvikovich, analyze his books, he is awesome, go watch his video.
What's up, Theolets? Welcome to Scene 2, Act 1 of Twelfth Night. We're on Chapter 2 of this series. Now, if you haven't watched my first video called Act 1, Scene 1 of Twelfth Night, go watch it right now because it's going to cover some basic things that you may not have heard in this video. Now, before I forget, I just have to say, don't forget to just subscribe to my channel. Please subscribe, please subscribe. This is really important. I really need some subscribers, so please subscribe for more content like this. Okay, now before I begin, it's time for our video chant, everybody. It goes a little bit like this. Read that book, read that book, read that book, read that book, read that book. Yeah, you heard it. Read the book before you watch the analysis video. Why is it called analysis if you haven't read the book yet? Okay, let's ask ourselves those thought-provoking questions for the second scene of Twelfth Night. Number 1, what are the similarities and differences between Lady Olivia and Viola? Number 2, what is the significance of the Orsino name? Number 3, how does a captain seem like the perfect character to have the interactions with Viola? Number 4, how are the social hierarchies enforced by the common people? Number 5, why does Viola want to hide her true identity? Number 6, how does Viola's ability to sing as a eunuch indicate the well-rounded / well-educated members in the nobility during the time? Essentially, how does it indicate how the nobility was very, very smart and intelligent? Try to indicate how they knew some things that they really didn't need to. Just indicate the contrast between the nobility and the common person during this time. Okay? That's what I want you to take away from that question. Number 7, what is the significance of music in this play? This is a big one. But specifically, I want you just to take into account the juxtaposition that occurs in Act 1, Scene 2 of this bad 12th Night play. It's not bad. I just wanted to say this bad boy, but I realize that sounds really weird. So this 12th Night play, take into account the juxtaposition. If you don't know what juxtaposition is, you will know soon enough. And what is the comparison between Scene 2 and Scene 1 with the music? Let's start analyzing page 9. Okay, open your books up to page 9. There's very little here, so this is going to be a very short segment. Now, my friends, what can you see? Well, we see that Viola is very confused about what Illyria is as a country. But before I begin, I talked about Illyria before. Right now, I just want to talk about Illyria a little bit more. I do think that I said it was in present-day Serbia, but just to make it more clear, what do I exactly mean? Well, if I look at the map, you can see that the prefecture of Illyricum, which is Illyria, is right next to the prefecture of Italy. So it's actually not next to Greece, it's much more next to Italy. And this is why there are many references to Italy / Rome. So whenever you hear the word Italy, think Rome. This is what I want to just put so you can really remember Rome. Because remember, Italy is not that big during this time. Rome is. Ancient Rome, not ancient Italy. So Italy is Rome. So there's going to be a lot of references to Rome because it was right next to Illyria. Just have that in mind. Now, also, she's very confused about why she's in Illyria, and the reason meaning is that she doesn't really know this place well, and that confusion is probably going to build on to her character of how she's going to lead a whole new life. After all, this is probably a very different life than the one that she was previously given. Right? We don't know where she came from, but we know that she definitely does not know what this area is. And, well, let's continue on more about what are the possibilities of her brother. Page 11. My brother, he's in Alice Elysium. Perchance he is not drowned. What think you, sailors? Okay, so she believes that her brother is most likely dead. Elysium is an allusion to Greek mythology, and you have already seen before this guy making allusions. By this guy, I mean Shakespeare. We've seen before that he makes allusions to mythological stories with the Diana and Actaeon thing, so this should come as no surprise that he does that right here. And of course, this is in reference to the characters during this time in Elysium, well, in Illyria, where they talk about Elysium. Illyria is an ancient country, and therefore there's going to be lots of ancient Greek references. And because, of course, the Romans basically stole everything from the Greeks. Of course. I mean, you can look at Roman mythology, and it's very similar to Greek mythology. I think they literally use they use very similar manuscripts, and the gods are based off of the Greek gods. So, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, it's all added in here. I talked more about that in the first video if you want to learn more about that. So anyways, we'll continue down here. And we realize that she says how she clearly, definitely cared about her brother, because she doesn't know what to do here without her brother, right? In the very page 9, she said, what should I do in Illyria? And then she goes on to say how her brother is in Elysium, indicating that without her brother, this is going to be perhaps a weird life for her, a strange life for her, because she's been very dependent on her brother before. And this might also correspond to the gender roles of the time, where women were expected to be dependent on men, so that's, of course, another big thing. But yeah, so she's, of course, confused. But that being said, let's not underestimate who Viola is as a person. She knows a lot, and that will be revealed on the next page. But what I want to say is that Viola is a pretty complex figure, to not say the least, and she can do a lot of things. Now, the captain says that she was saved. Luckily. It's lucky, but it's funny how he says, oh, she was luckily saved, yet her brother's not here. And of course, we can infer that Viola has a huge attachment to her brother. Now, she even shows her attachment to the brother when she exclaims, oh, my poor brother, with an exclamation mark. This is on line 7, or I believe line 8. I think it's line 8. So on line 8, she specifically says, oh, my poor brother. And what I want you to see is whenever they make the word oh, just like oh without anything, that is an exclamation in poetry. So that's going to be used a lot, and it means a lot of different things. Here, it means how she is just surprised and amazed that her brother is gone. Luckily, the captain does reassure her. So the captain we can characterize as someone who provides information and basically serves as a plot filler in for the story. The captain doesn't really serve much of a purpose besides that. Essentially, the captain is the perfect character to have the interaction with Viola, which I talked about in question number 3. But before we even get to question number 3, let's talk about the differences between Lady Olivia and Viola. So as we know that Lady Olivia has a dead brother, and this dead brother meant a lot to her. That should be considered. Remember, she literally won't see anyone for 7 years because of how much this dead brother meant to her. And here, it also indicates how Viola cares about her brother, because she says, oh, my poor brother, and she clearly cares a lot about what the captain talks about when he says, he reassures her, no, your brother is probably fine, he is a very practical person, he was able to hang on to the mast of a floating boat, and therefore, he is likely still alive. She definitely cares about that, how he's most likely still alive, and therefore, this indicates that they both have much connections to their brothers, and that's the first similarity between Lady Olivia and Viola. The second of all is that the brothers both have good qualities, right? We don't know much about Olivia's brother. Olivia's brother is very ambiguous, but we can clearly see that he has good qualities because she refuses to see anyone for 7 years. This must indicate that her brother was a pretty damn good person. Like, we wouldn't just go for any person, just say, oh, I won't see any man for 7 years. Like, no big deal. No. If you're not going to see someone for 7 years, that means that that person meant so much to your life that guess what? You feel like you have to live these 7 years because to serve out, I don't know, your punishment of having to see him die. Or I can't really say it any other way because the 7 years are kind of 7 years of bad luck. The 7 years of bad luck that must follow just to commemorate how important he is as a figure. So clearly, they were both good people. Of course, Viola's brother was not as important as Olivia's. I think Olivia's was much more important because the whole 7 years thing. But Viola's was very important as well. And it indicates how he's very important and he has very good qualities based on what the captain says. The captain says this: most provident in peril, bind himself, courage and hope, both teaching him to practice, to a strong mast that lived upon the sea, where like Orion on the dolphin's back, I saw him hold acquaintance with the waves so long as I could see. When he says courage and hope, this indicates that the brother is very, very bold, and he is willing to do anything that there is needing to be done to save himself. So, he's going to try to look out for himself, and therefore, by looking out for himself, he is looking out for his wife. It's his wife. Not his wife. No, not his wife. His sister. That's much more normal. Okay, he's looking out for his sister because he knows that his sister will be very much troubled if her brother dies. Okay, so that's a huge thing that I want you to see is their connection to the dead brothers. But not only that, they have their high social status. For example, with Lady Olivia, we know that she is of high social status based on page 13, and I know this is the next page of analysis, but I'm just going to go into very little about it. It says that she's the daughter of a count. And of course, we know that this person is a very good social status. Also because of page 13, because she talks about what my estate is, how, based on what her social status is, she has to act a certain way. But I will talk about that more in page 13 analysis. Let's go back to page 11. So, she clearly sees the captain as a very good person because he provides the answers that she wants him to provide. He provides a lot of good answers, and he's very reassuring, and he really serves as a guide. Now, when she asks him, knowest thou this country? You want to know why she asks him that? Well, she asks him whether he knows the country, not just because she's wondering, but also because if he knows the country, then he can serve as a guide for the mischief that she wants to do in the future. But before we get into that mischief, let's talk about Orsino. Orsino is considered, quote-unquote, a noble duke in nature as a name. That nobility is perhaps what attracts people to him. And he was first a bachelor, so he was an unmarried man. And yet, he still remains a bachelor, except he pursues the love of Lady Olivia, who won't see him. Now this, of course, probably makes Viola wonder, well then, who will love him? And of course, I think in the future we find out that Viola will end up loving him, perhaps because of this thing, because he's unmarried, and because he's such a prominent figure. But before I get into that, let's simply just talk about how the captain is going to be the absolute perfect aid for any plan that Viola has. After all, he was bred and born not 3 hours travel from this very place, meaning that he knows his way around things. And if you know your way around things and you're well educated, my friend, that's street smarts. And street smarts is a lot more important than book smarts. Because Viola has book smarts, that's for sure. And that's seen more later in the next page. But this guy has street smarts. And here we can see how their street smarts and their book smarts, the contrast that they have, will collaborate to form something very beautiful. A plot and some suspense. Turn your pages to page 13. This is perhaps the most important page of this scene. And the reason why this is one of the most important pages is simply because of the plan that Viola decides to say. Okay, let's get into this. Now, in here, she talks about essentially what she wants to do with her life here in Illyria. And that will be something that is not necessarily a legal thing to do. But before we go into the illegal things, and I know you've been waiting for those illegal things, I really need to talk about who is Olivia. The captain says that Olivia is, quote, a virtuous maid, the daughter of a count that died some 12 months since, and leaving her in the protection of his son, her brother, who shortly also died, for whose dear love they say she hath endured the sight and company of men. You can find this from lines 37 to 41. Now, what that description indicates is that Olivia has had a lot of tragedy in her life recently. So, first of all, her father died, and her father was a very noble person because he was count, and of course counts are really respected in that society, so that's already bad enough with your father dead. But not only that, her brother dies just 1 year later, so you can understand now why that whole 7 years thing. She feels, okay, is this because of me? Perhaps that's what she's thinking, and this is the whole 7 years thing. So 7 years is 7 years of bad luck. Maybe she feels like they're dying because of her. She's very superstitious. She thinks, wait a second, am I the reason why they're dying so soon? Because how else can this be possible? This is not fair. It must be because of me. And therefore, she feels like she has to punish herself with 7 years of bad luck. And that's just a theory. Of course, she might just, hate men. And I'm perfectly fine with her hating men. But that whole 7 years, it feels very symbolic. And I don't know. It might be that she's starting to think that, oh gosh, maybe she's accidentally causing these deaths. Maybe because some illness is spreading from her. Because, of course, illnesses were very prominent during that time. Like, oh, did I catch a disease, but I can only spread it, and I cannot actually, I cannot get dead from that disease. For lack of better words, I cannot, I'm asymptomatic, right? So that is also a possibility. But we don't know anything about that. These are just theories, and this is theoretical literature, so I make theories for fun. But how were social hierarchies enforced by the common people? Okay, well, social hierarchies are enforced by the common people in the first 3 lines. It says, and then 'twas fresh in murmur, as you know, what great ones do the less will prattle of, that he did seek the love of fair Olivia. Now, it's in parentheses, this whole social hierarchy thing, but essentially it says how those of lower rank will always rumor about the higher ones. And that's how the nobility stays in check. You see, because in the common media being through conversation, because at this time, of course, there was no movies or books or whatnot. Well, there were books, but they were very little read. It was all through oral speaking and written speech. And that's why, by having that as a huge part of conversation, remember, Shakespeare sets this in ancient times. So, take that into account. It's not the 1500s, it's ancient times. The printing press was not invented until the 1400s. So therefore, oral communication was a big, big thing about that time's culture. And anyways, since people are talking about the nobility, that enforces the contrast between the nobility and the smaller, and therefore it encourages, well, this is in the future, but chivalry encourages people to try to get into higher social statuses, and it encourages people to become more educated and better, and try to work their way up to the nobility. And therefore the nobility is valued as a privileged and respected part of society, because it's so amazing, and because, because by making everything relevant to the people, I don't know, what do I say? The nobility remains important, and therefore they get to make their own decisions. Okay, that's number 4 for you. Let's talk about number 1. What are the similarities and differences between Lady Olivia and Viola? And this should finally cover that question. Oh gosh, that was the most big question here. And we will see that the similarities and differences are that, well, definitely, they are different, I think, because Olivia suffered a lot more tragedy than Viola has. But that being said, Viola did get shipwrecked, but here she lost, right, her father and then her brother. So that's those. There is maybe a little bit more tragedy on Olivia's side, but definitely both have suffered their deal of tragedy. And not only that, but also Olivia and Viola are similar because, as I said, they're royalty. They're similar because they're both in that wealth status. And not only that, but the anagram. Okay? So, Viola, interestingly enough, almost sounds like Olivia. So, if I arrange the letters, I could get Oliva. And I just would have to add an I, and bam, I get Olivia. So it indicates that they mirror each other in many ways. They're almost similarities, and quite frankly, we don't know if they're the same characters. Shakespeare does this, and it causes us to question, wait a second, who is Olivia, and who is Viola? Of course, they are much different characters. But essentially, Viola could use Olivia's story and probably get away with it because her brother has also most likely, quote unquote, died, while Olivia's has also died. And also, Viola, we don't know if her count or her father is alive. And we know that she's part of the noble family. That being said, the captain did see that person there in the ship. And with that being the thing, well, it's certainly not the same, because he already knew about the whole Olivia incident before he saw Viola, his brother, sail away. But the question is the captain the most reliable narrator? Is he not telling us everything? That's something to think about. Now, why does Viola want to hide her true identity? Well, because Viola is part of a high social status. And therefore, if she's part of such a high social status, well, how do I say this? She could be found out, and if she has some duties in a different country or whatnot that she serves in, she has to go back there. So this is like her own little vacation or her own little holiday. That's my own opinion on it. And that's why she wants to remain hidden. And she's going to be living an invisible life, trying to navigate her way through Illyria without anyone seeing who she is. And that's why she wanted to work under the Lady Olivia, because, well, nobody else is permitted to go in there. No men are allowed to go in there. And therefore, she can be more hidden. But no, of course, Lady Olivia is not available for anyone. Therefore, she must be with Orsino, the Duke. And now this is the scheme. She is going to dress up as a male eunuch. And by doing that, she's pretending to be a male while she's a female. And that female is being played by a male. Just the comedy that Shakespeare does. And why is it played by a male? Well, because in Shakespearean theater, the characters had to be played by males. This is, of course, a little bit of the satire, in my opinion, on Elizabethan theater in general. How stupid sometimes acting like this is, because, well, it might make absolutely no sense for a male to play a female who has to play a male, because isn't the male just playing himself? This, of course, goes into the reason why maybe Shakespeare is also a little bit angry at the gender roles of the time. Maybe just having fun with the whole idea. Who knows? I'm not sure. Just Shakespeare having a little fun, or if it's some sort of satirical and deeper symbolic meaning on gender roles. It's always hard to tell here. Now, I talked about why she wants to hide her true identity, because she doesn't want to be found out. Now, why is her ability to sing as a eunuch indicative of the nobility and the royal society? Well, because not very few people commoners knew how to do such things. Like, very few people knew how to be singers, or male sopranos, or castratos. And therefore, it's very weird for a woman, I guess, to learn how to be a male soprano, because I'm not sure, perhaps they might have a different singing tone, and so maybe that will make it a little bit hard for her to sing. But I might be wrong. Let me just look something up really quickly. Oh, never mind. Soprano is a type of classical female singing voice. No, okay, so females can do this. Okay, yeah. It's actually harder to be a male soprano. Okay. Oh, I didn't know that, actually. Alright. Well, either way, being a singer, it's very unlikely for the commoners to know how to sing. And what's very interestingly enough, I mean, you would not expect some people of a noble family and very well educated, well rounded, to like even care about this stuff, because this is, of course, for the servants and the lowers. But no, they're educated in singing, they're educated in probably writing and other things, indicating how well-rounded the royal family is. When I say the royal family, I mean the nobility. I always mean the nobility. But this is, of course, part of satirizing the fact that the nobles have to be the exact same, completely contrasting the lower commoners. They can actually have many similarities, right? Essentially, it doesn't have to be just middle-classmen that are singing, because usually it was, I think, middle-classmen who were being the singers, not very lower-classmen. Lower-classmen were working. Middle-classmen may have been singers, so if you're middle or upper middle class in Athens, maybe you're going to work as a singer. But, of course, here, even nobles who are supposed to just like sit around idly doing nothing, or maybe have some education on some other things, can be singers. So that could be a little bit of satire, but it could just be indicating the well-roundedness. I don't know at all. That's just a little bit of just a question that I'm asking you, and I want you to tell me. And lastly, what is the significance of music in this play? Well, let's go back to the first line in Act 1, Scene 1. If music be the food of love, play on. Give me excess of it that's surfeiting. Well, here, guess what? She is going to be singing. She is playing on. She is giving the music. And that indicates, perhaps, well, what do you think that indicates? It indicates that she is feeding the love. And does that mean, perhaps, by feeding love to Orsino, that she is in love with Orsino? I mean, you can only shoot so much love into the air before you become part of that love. Was that all metaphorical? I don't know. And how can Orsino love her when he loves Lady Olivia? And does Viola love Orsino? It's just interesting. And not only that, the juxtaposition between a eunuch and a mute. The captain is a mute. He doesn't say anything. But why is he a mute? Is he doing this for corrupt gains? A eunuch sings and says. The captain is quiet. But why would you be quiet? Everyone wants something for themselves. Well, my friends, that's a question for next time. I'll see you. Alright, page 15, last page analysis of Act 1, Scene 2. Let's just talk about it. So the illusion of a mute is an allusion to when times in, I believe, Turkey. This was in older times. Essentially, if you're a mute, that means that you are not allowed to talk, and if you were ever going to talk, if you ever decide to talk, my friend, well then you can be blinded. Meaning that the captain is not at all pulling any cons, any deceptions, any little fishy tricks into the game. No, he really won't say anything about Viola's secrets. But of course, if he does, well that's going to cause some drama, and that's going to be some fun. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I don't know. Find out later in some more analysis video.
It's our dictionary segment!
Yeah, it's a dictionary segment of Twelfth Night where I say the words that you didn't know and I tell you the definitions. What? What does the word peril mean? It means serious and immediate danger. So, when we look at the page 11, we will see peril, peril, peril. That means he was in immediate danger. Well, my friends, what does covenant mean? Forward-looking is what it means, and that's already said, but what does forward-looking mean? I have no idea. It means that he's looking forward, and what does looking forward means? That means that he's progressive, and he's ready to tackle what obstacles come in his way. Here we go, next up, bind. What does it mean? Most prominent peril, bind himself. By saying bind, it means tight or fasten tightly. Tie or fasten tightly. That's what I meant to say. So what does that mean? That means he's holding on to that mast for dear life. Oh God, boat, please save me. What does mellow mean? Mellow is used in... Where is mellow used? It is used in this part right here. Till I had made mine own occasion mellow. Now, that means ripe. But what does that mean, ripe? Well, it means that till I made my own occasion mellow, what he's trying to say is until I make my reason sweet and important, until essentially I will, and essentially, let me just paraphrase the whole thing. Oh, that I served that lady and might not be delivered. Delivered means revealed to the world until I had made mine own reason ripe. So what does that mean? My own reason ripe. It means until I had made my own reason understood. So until she has done what she needs to do on that place, she will remain revealed. And therefore, it benefits her. We don't know exactly what she wants to do, but that's what she wants to say. And that's perhaps for another scene to find out exactly what are her plans. Why exactly does she want to stay on that island and not go back to where she probably came from? Okay. Oh, I already said that means oh, it's an exclamatory thing used in the beginning of poetry. And continuing on, using beauteous. Beauteous is a word meaning beautiful, essentially meaning that even though the captain's character is beautiful and amazing and attractive, is it really like that? That's what she's wondering. Prithee means please. Prithee, give me this money. Prithee, 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 prithee. Illyria, I talked to you about that. It's in that geographical region next to Italy, but remember that because there's going to be a lot of Italian references. And as always, study up. Thanks, Theolites, for watching this video on Act 1, Scene 2 of Twelfth Night. Don't forget, once again, to subscribe and leave comments down below on what did you like about this video. Now, click right here to subscribe. And I know I'm not pointing to the subscribing button, but if I am, thanks for reading.